Right, so Keir Starmer's trip to Scotland went well, didn't it? From being taken to task on a train for his anti-ceasefire stance, his pro-Israelism, his Zionism without qualification, the shouts of disgusted people, disgusted voters chased after him. His conduct throughout was a disgrace equally. These are the people he purports to want to represent, but actually just wants their vote, doesn't want their opinions, hasn't cared for them at all since becoming Labour leader on domestic issues. But on the matter of the Israeli genocide, he, like so many of our politicians, are completely out of step with public opinion. And when confronted by it, insulated as he is from ordinary working class people in his Westminster bubble with his security, well, he runs scared of it. He's shocked by it. He has no idea just how much his attitudes have made him nationally despised. Political leaders like him usually take years to become that reviled. They've usually been in government at that, and for years. Yet he's still in opposition. If he thinks he's hated now, he can think again. I would say he needs to change his tune, but it's not us he listens to, so he won't. And things will get worse for him because of it. Right, so Keir Starmer's trip to Scotland saw him receive a reception that was colder than a polar bear's nutsack. It was a mix of hilarious consequences for him, as those of us critical of him, especially over his stance on Israel, which is what the Scottish people took him to task over, showed him as someone utterly incapable of being confronted by the public. A look on his face of how on earth has this person got so close to me, combined with no idea of how to respond, to taking a much darker tone, the anger in people's voices as he was rushed across the platform at Glasgow station into a waiting car, which then drove at protesters in order to get away. Allegations going around that the car did actually hit people. It all began on the train up, of course. If you can remember all the jeering in the media about Jeremy Corbyn having sat on a train floor because there were no seats available. Any little thing to have a go at him, as it was at that time. But compare that to now, with the Labour leader and his team clearly heading to Scotland in first class, as someone calmly walks in and comes up to his table, and immediately it's a look of fear on his face. What am I doing in the same space as this person? Should you be in first class? Do you belong here? But actually the guy, whoever he was, he actually gave a masterclass in how to deal with a politician when they come up to them in public. He calmly just walked up to that table and he said, "Keir, how many more children in Palestine have to die before you call for a ceasefire? Over 7,000 children have died. Over 7,000 children have been slaughtered by Israel. This is unacceptable. What happened to human rights? What happened to democracy? We call for peace. We call for democracy. We don't see any of that when it comes to the Palestinian people. 7,000 children. How many more have to die? 20,000 people. How many more have to die? This is unacceptable. Where is your humanity?" Throughout all of that, Starmer just glared at the guy, just shocked, to silence, unable to answer, waiting for transport police or his minders, whoever it was with him, to usher this ordinary Scottish guy, disgusted by what he's witnessing like so many of the rest of us, who found himself on the train with Starmer by happenstance and chose to confront him about what he's saying and doing in regards to Israel and Gaza. The wannabe next Prime Minister, folks, the guy who wants to lead the country after all, and all he could do was stare at this ordinary guy just having an ordinary conversation, effectively, just saying all the things we're all thinking, until he was being ushered out of the door, still talking to him, quoting those death figures as Starmer just turned away to talk to his aide again, as he was before. It is exactly the same scenario and same response from Starmer as we saw in Liverpool back in 2021, I think it was now, when he was confronted by Scouse legend Audrey White, activist Audrey White, over the purging going on in the party under his leadership in a restaurant. And he, again, couldn't find words to say to her, couldn't find or didn't feel she, or indeed Scottish train guy, deserved a response from him. That they are beneath him? When the Audrey White footage came out, I thought he was just stunned into silence because she gave him both barrels, it had to be said. But the guy on the train was so calm, so collected, as I said. It was a masterclass in talking to a politician and holding them to account assertively, not forcefully, but making the points nonetheless, and Starmer just can't or won't respond to that. He's either a very weak man that can't stand up for himself, or a very rude and arrogant man thinking ordinary members of the public are beneath him and don't deserve his time or his whatever his opinion happens to be, or the truth of what he has to say. or both. In no way does he come out of that exchange and again, train guy just like Audrey White gets bundled out of his presence. Unless he booked the entire first-class carriage, it's a public space to travel through. Who knows, though? Maybe he did. He's not going to sit on a train floor like his predecessor to make a point of how badly run our train services are. If they work for him, then they work just fine. So he gets to the station. Things get a lot worse for him, though. As well-spoken and assertive as the guy on the train was, the station was full of people who were really just plain angry at him and weren't in the mood for the same level of assertiveness and politeness even. If Starmer thought he had been given a hard time before, he was like a rabbit caught in headlights here as he was quickly surrounded by security and transport police and he was hurried through the station. Look at the expression on his face here. He has no clue the scale of hatred he's building up for himself with his actions. This is a man who cannot believe what he's going through right now. Does he think people will not speak out or not protest? Or does he intend to just pack this sort of thing in and make sure it can't happen? Especially if they know he was coming, as clearly word had got out. Shouts of, "You are facilitating Israel. Shame on you," as he ran, all but ran, through the station to his car, as those calls carried on ringing out, desperate to get away from the people jeering at him for his actions, for his words, out of step with what the majority of the British public want to see from their politicians, which is them calling for a ceasefire. And I'm reminded again of Corbyn at this point, because security used to comment about how much of a nightmare he was as well. But not because everyone wanted to shout and scream and lynch him, but because people wanted to stop and talk to him and get selfies with him and shake his hand, which he would always then do. And so it took them forever to get him to where he was supposed to be. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Look at how far the Labour Party has fallen under this fraud who lied himself into the job, won't engage with the public, and has made himself incredibly unpopular before he's even got the chance to be in power. Opposition leaders building up this much resentment and disdain to be as unpopular in opposition as they are. It's not a good look, and at literally any other time, when the Tories would look less broken than they are now, this will be a significant problem for Labour. Instead, they still have a 20-point lead, and yet this is what leads them. A craven coward who won't defend his own actions when put on the spot by an ordinary member of the public who happens to stand in front of them. The very worst part came once he got to his car, though. Surrounded by incensed protesters, the bulk of the protest, upon his knowledge of him coming, waiting outside, waiting with their megaphones and their Palestine flags and their banners and their chants of free Palestine. His car was surrounded and couldn't go anywhere. The police were struggling with the sheer volume of people there to give Starmer a piece of their mind. But instead of waiting for the police to do their job and clear a path for them, the driver, whether at Starmer's behest or not, we do not know, decided to move before he should have done, endangering the people gathered there. I don't care what side of the Palestinian argument you happen to be on. We should all agree that that was just dangerous and stupid and should never have happened. Video footage appears to show the car hitting, or at the very least being used to push people out of the way. Ordinary people protesting out of the way. That is disgusting. It's bad enough Starmer refuses to engage, refuses to change his abhorrent stance on ceasefires here, refuses to make the call for peace now and end the killing as more people die daily in Gaza. Innocent people, the vast majority of them, and half of them children. But to show casual disregard for the safety of those protesting those choices of his, here in this country, by driving through them in the manner that happened, is caught on film, is really utterly unforgivable. And again, it's not even the first time where Starmer's concerned, because in 2020 he got let off the hook by the police when he hit a cyclist so hard it dented his car. And of course you can forget the Beergate allegations and the fact there's a Labour Police and Crime Commissioner in Durham where that incident happened, which Starmer seemed banged to rights over, and yet got let off after allegedly a fine was issued to him and then got pulled because he'd promised to quit if he found guilty. The police have also been used to boot out dissenters at his own party conference, used as lynchmen walking in the corridors. So all in all, Starmer is a one-man, I would say walking, talking police state, but actually it's a more silent running police state as he runs away from protest, afraid to confront the messaging, refuses to change tack, just sticks as many bodies in front of himself as possible to shield himself from the people he pretends that he wants to represent. Ridiculously, 2 people who confronted Starmer and accused him of facilitating genocide got arrested in Glasgow. For what? Telling the truth? It took Thatcher over a decade to become this reviled. It took Blair several years to get this reviled, and both have been in power for that time. Starmer hasn't even got that far yet. There is not one single redeeming feature about the way this man conducts himself or his politics. Just look at him. Look at his conduct here. Look at his actions with the general public, because that's exactly how he'd treat you or I if we came up to him in the street and put him on the spot over policy. And ask yourself, do I really want to see a guy like that who would treat me like that running this country? Is that really getting the Tories out, or could it actually be putting someone even worse in, as hard as that might be to believe? We don't have to vote for him or the Tories. The only way this country will get better and be run by decent people and actual leaders who can lead is if we all take our votes away from the both of them. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please do have your say on this story in the comments below and be part of the conversation. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where, if voting Labour to get the Tories out is such a thing, Jacob Rees-Mogg saying Starmer would be welcomed with open arms in the Tory party might make you think twice about that. It was, of course, mischief-making on his part, but it's also sadly very true. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.